guess it's because we ended up doing a presentation on punk, so I guess it's fitting. Okay, my title, like she said, it's No Sexism, No Racism, No Homophobia. The reason I chose that title is because oftentimes bands, hardcore bands, will use this phrase in between songs in their set to sort of like reinforce the ideas of the subculture, which I'll dive into a little bit later. The contents of my... Okay, background, like I said, hardcore is hardcore punk, essentially. It's a short version of hardcore punk. Just the natural progression of punk rock music. You know, you started with bands like the Sex Pistols and the Ramones, and they sort of, as time went on, it got louder and faster and angrier. So a whole subculture, as punk is a subculture, another subculture broke away from that and started a new one, which is hardcore. And it has the same sort of the ethos of the culture. It's very anti-authoritarian. It's very anti-police. It's very egalitarian. And so, but as I study it, and as somebody that's part of the subculture, you see even with this ideology, there's these sort of breaks in the system that sort of more reflect the culture that they tried to break from, less than something that they created themselves. It's too long, so I'm not going to go over that too much. Okay, so some previous literature. There really isn't a lot on this subculture. It's subculture from the 80s. I mean, it started in the 80s. It's fairly new-ish. There's not too much on it. So what I did find, though, is Straight Edge has some information on it. And Straight Edge is a subculture within a subculture. Essentially what Straight Edge is, it came from hardcore, and it's the sort of an abstinence movement of we don't do drugs, we don't drink, those kind of things like that. But it shares the same space as hardcore. It's still like people that listen to hardcore are often straight edge, and vice versa. I find that women it shows, this is a report on women it shows, find that they tend to be limited in their roles. Even with this egalitarian ideology, they seem to be limited to the girlfriend role, oftentimes. Putting them, as I've said, into a sexualized and heterosexualized roles. You know, they don't really have, talked about females having agency earlier, they don't really have agency in the subculture. So my hypothesis is that women are underrepresented and are excluded oftentimes from the subculture. So what I did was I took a survey, and the survey was multiple choice questions and a few essay questions, short answer essay questions. And I distributed it through social media. Like I said, I'm somebody, this is a subculture that I'm a part of. So it was easy for me to find. I have a lot of friends in the subculture. I have a lot of people that know other people in the subculture. So it just spread. And it spread really fast. I got more than 600 respondents to my survey. And I have 61% of my respondents were male and 39% were female, which I think is almost telling in and of itself. And there's no other, I didn't ask age, I didn't ask race, or even geographic location. So what I found is that when I asked about how comfortable my respondents were at shows, most of the time they said, the men said that they were comfortable. The women, not so much. As I said here, 64% of the male respondents felt very comfortable at shows, whereas only 39% of women felt comfortable. That's a pretty big break. There's a graph that sort of shows that. We have the very comfortable, somewhat comfortable, and uncomfortable, which, as you can see, women answered uncomfortable and somewhat comfortable quite a bit more than men did. And as I said, shows what that is. Boys club atmosphere. That's something that's mostly, it's men it shows. It's, I would say, so my own personal observation, it's probably a 2-to-1 ratio. So it's really, the women are outnumbered already. And then shows tend to be hyper-masculine. They tend to be violent, and they tend to be very angry, and just very, there's a lot of really intense displays of masculinity at shows. Some women actually reported being sexually assaulted at shows, which is unfortunate, obviously, and a lot of that comes with just women trying to be involved in the crowd. They're trying to, stage dive and do things like that, and then, they get assaulted in the process. So we have a graph that shows how comfortable with talking about music with other people of their opposite gender. We had that men felt that they were taken very seriously when they talked about bands, new albums, tours, things like that. Women didn't feel that way. They felt that their opinion wasn't valued the same way that men feel that their opinion is valued. So, and I think this goes back to the assigned roles. A lot of the research showed that that women would express feeling like, well, they're just here because their boyfriend is here because, they have some friends here. There was reports of men saying that women are only here just to get boyfriends. The term coat rack, I'd never heard this before. After years of going to shows, I've never heard the term coat rack before, and it's used to refer to women who sort of hold their boyfriends or somebody's things as they go into the mosh pit or they go up to the front of the stage or anything like that. So they sort of stay back and take a very passive role in these environments. As I stated before, they are very violent. And violence isn't something that women are really encouraged to do in this society. They're sort of left to the role of being passive, and because sort of the idea of attractiveness sort of gets involved. When I asked a question about how do you feel about women who are in the mosh pit, a lot of men answered, it's fun, but I just don't find it attractive, as if that matters to them. But that's sort of the thing. The fact that it matters to them is telling. It shows them that they're sort of carrying this baggage, this cultural baggage that was brought over from the mainstream culture. A lot of males feared that they would hit a woman accidentally if they're moshing. They feared they'd hit them in the face and they would hurt them. So it goes to another sort of stereotype of women as victims. This one respondent wrote, and I thought this was a really good quote, "I got a black eye and everyone thought I was a domestic violence victim. And a boy gets a black eye and he's a badass." That's really typical. So going back to whether this subculture has connections to the mainstream culture, I definitely think it does. It's not good to talk about these things in this subculture. They don't want to think that they're carrying so much baggage from the culture that they've tried so hard to break from. But it's very evident that there's still those ideologies that are attached to it. So you have the being passive, you had this sort of exclusion from masculine activities. But this exclusion isn't forced. It's created by a social sort of reinforcement, social enforcement. It's sort of like she's not attractive when she does it. Other women sometimes will even say to women who get involved, "Well, that's not cute. Don't do that. It's not cute." So you see this sort of it's controlling, and it keeps women sort of corralled into their mainstream traditional gender roles. So, like I said, subcultures that are a reaction to oppressive norms of the dominant culture still tend to carry those norms over. Like I said before, all I did was I collected gender. I didn't collect age. I didn't collect race or geographic location. And I think that would have been really interesting to get at. I think it would have been, especially geographic location. Each hard person is different in this country. They all have different ideologies attached to them. I did ask some open-ended questions. Currently, right now, I'm working to get interviews from some women that are involved in the subculture. One woman that was in a band previously, in a hardcore band, and I'm going to get an interview from that and see how that sort of dynamic adds up. Well, that's the end of my survey, or my study, sorry. Any questions or comments?
Any questions for Mike?
Yes.
Okay. So, if I remember correctly, you talked mostly about the scene and the culture around. Do you think that the music has any influence on this?
The really interesting thing about the music is that these bands sort of, it goes back to it's rhetoric versus reality. The bands are very, we're against this. But at the same time, you know, if a band is doing something, it has less of an influence than one would expect, especially in a music-based subculture. There's really not, a band will be anti-sexist and they have lyrics about that, but at the same time, they as individual people sort of perpetrate and recreate these same sort of, these oppressive kind of sexist ideologies. Any other questions?
I got one.
Yes.
I noticed that your data in both sets on the women's side is virtually identical. Would you consider that to be the overwhelming culture seeping into your subculture?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's. I think the whole thing is that this is the dominant culture. Our mainstream culture has very sexist ideologies attached to it of what women should be doing, how they should be doing things. And so I think even when a culture breaks away or attempts to break away from that, even if it's the reason why they broke away is because they saw that as oppressive, it still carries it with them.
Have you tried thinking about perhaps instead of just doing rock music or band music, trying to do another subculture and seeing if that number stays the same?
Actually, yeah, I think that would be very interesting. I think that would be an interesting thing to do to see if it sort of matches up with every subculture. To see like anything like, indie rock music, or I don't know, like people that watch are really into like anime or something like that. Like sort of like each little subculture. I think that would be interesting to see like who's even like the gaming subculture. See even.
You would figure that they would be a little bit more apprehensive in like rap culture, or like in Death Metal Show, or like more women would be much more comfortable like at a Michael Bublé concert than they would be for Metallica.
See, I think that goes back to the ideas of gender roles, like masculinity and like violence and sort of aggression. I think aggression is a big thing. Women are not supposed to be aggressive. This is very aggressive music. It's very angry and it's very violent, sort of. And I think that's the thing is women are not supposed to be aggressive, so they're pushed away from that. Yes?
What other subcultures could you investigate that are overtly anti-sexist in their rhetoric?
That's a good question. I'm not really sure how to answer that one. This is just a subculture that, it's something that I'm a part of, so it's something I know, it's something I'm really close to. So I don't know, I really don't know what other subcultures that are as anti-sexist is. Honestly, probably like radical left-wing activism might be an interesting one, because I know that's another thing that I sort of have my hands in, and I can see that there's a lot of sexism in a similar fashion to that too.
Because the women cook the food and bring the casseroles.
Yeah. or the sort of idea that like, oh, well, your problems don't really matter, we have to worry about something bigger. So, but yeah. Anything else?